Your movie on. By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm so sorry to
You're
interrupt.
good.
Your video on 14 and 11 and the Convergence, it's in my show notes for tonight.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm
for the
looking forward to
relic
it.
grind, because you're a lunatic.
I
Absolutely
am.
love you. Absolutely love you. And I would love if you were right. You know, my love for 11, you know that, but you're a lunatic. You're a lunatic.
I truly am. And at the end of the day, like I get this a lot. Here's what I hear. Oh God, I hope he's wrong because his ego continues to grow. So I've been just like, like, oh, this is what's happening. And then it's like, and then I get people come back, like, how, like, I called you an idiot. And then exactly what you said was going to happen. It's like, I'm just reading the tea leaves, man. Like at the end of the day, like this is like in that video, I'm like, is this entertainment? Who knows? Yoshi P is, he is a showman. And at the end of the day, like we've got all of these pieces kind of moving. It could work. It couldn't. Who knows? At the end of the day, if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be just fine. If it does happen, I'm going to be like, listen up, people.
I mean, look, Yoshida did utter the words, quote, return to Vanadil to me. He said he was joking, but he might have let something slip.
And he's also expressed his own interest in liking games like that, the more difficult, but also recognizing that the market probably doesn't support the cost anymore.
On the market aspect, it's like Yoshi P's talked about it, and it's like it makes so much sense for as much as like even the fact that like Ninja streaming 11, like even for the fact that like that is a time that has come and has gone. However, there's still a demand for that. How do you feed that? And it's like, that's why that video kicks off. Like the easiest thing I could see them doing is combining the subs like they did at one point a long time ago for a short period of time. Because all of a sudden it's like
technically, and I'm sure you know this, just kept it brief for the video, but for those that don't know it, they weren't technically connected.
Well, your account is, but yeah,
they were still billed through Pay Online on one and Square Enix
it was a reduced
on the
fee.
other.
Yeah,
they just gave you a discount on the Play Online
yes.
if there was a flag showing that you had both. So it wasn't like you were making one payment, taking care of both things, which is what you later said honestly to be the ideal. And
honestly, that'd be fine if they actually brought that back. If that's like what the technology they have is, that's all they could do. But if they brought that back, because essentially
because they've said in interviews as recently as last year that probably isn't possible because of the two payment systems. So as far as direct linking, so they would have to do what they did then, which was just flag both and give you a couple bucks off one, but you're still making two payments.
Something in that regards, because I think one of the things when we
get your 11th retainer.
Well, you never know. But the reason is like how like Square Enix, I think, is uniquely positioned to offer that product that to the harder core if they just chose to support it. And when you compare this obviously to Blizzard and World of Warcraft, with one subscription they also offer Classic. And when people talk about like 1.0, like you don't get it, guys. 11, like that's. Don't think of 14 1.0. Think of 11 as our classic, Final Fantasy kind of experience. And so like that, I think that ends up becoming when you look at like a theme park MMO that tries to compete with Game Pass that has theme park MMOs included at the same price. Like I only see when you look at what a subscription based game is trying to add as much value to that proposition as possible in terms of just market, capitalization in that regard. So like who knows, like, but I would love to see something of that nature. And I think 11 is actually their product. When Yoshi P talks about that hardcore game, why create a new one? It's not going to sit here and bring in the people to support it, but you do have one. What would it take to, I don't know, polish off some of the edges? But
it is a hard sell though when for us, fine, you like say, hey, you know what, we're gonna do a classic. And I'm talking about some of the things I plan to talk about later today. So whatever.
Preview for tonight.
Preview for tonight. We're going to do a classic, right? We're going to give you Final Fantasy 11 classic. We're going to cap it at 75 because, if you look at it now, it really isn't as hardcore as it once was in any way, shape, or form with the trust system and being able to do just about everything alone or with the trust system now. But hey, we're going to give you Final Fantasy 11. Cap it at level 5, and we're going to give you that hardcore experience in a classic mode. I am absolutely all for that. absolutely all for that. But it is a hard. I'm only for that though because I played 11 and I still do play 11.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Does
a
it add or
hard
dilute
step.
if the games are connected? Like imagine with the new achievement system coming, which I hope to God they talk
Right.
about tomorrow.
I'm sure,
Is
I think they
imagine
will. I
if
think that's part
something
of the
you did in
system
11
updates. Yeah.
gives you access to a different mount in 14. Does that add or dilute? Is that good or bad?
Okay,
And
so
I don't know that it is just
for-
all one or all the other.
For me personally, it's good because I play both. I think it's bad for somebody that has no real interest in playing 11, but is a completionist in 14. Because now it feels like almost like you're forcing me to play another game to gain things in the game I do want to be
a dangerous
playing.
term in 14 because we have so
Right.
much locked beyond the Mog
Right.
Station.
Yeah.
So you
Right.
already have to put a giant asterisk of like, this is
And-
everything that's not seasonal or Mog
Yeah.
Station.
Is it worth it though to make this classic server, because you have to turn around and then say, hey, by the way, once we hit basically Chains of Promathia, we're done. You know, we're not developing new content for this game as it is. And so, yeah, for those that maybe never played it and might be interested in trying it, it kind of doesn't it turn you off a little bit when you're like, oh, by the way, it's never getting anything new at this point. We just can't unless we overhaul the entire damn thing, which we're not going to do.
We're not going to do. The cost is ridiculous.
Diablo and Path of Exiles have found a way to make things seasonal where you can go back and you can create a slight twist on the game, right? So you could go back and change the jobs a little bit and then say, okay, play back through. And so if you go back and you just twist it and say, okay, we're going to modify all monsters of this type to have the following modifier and then re-release the server. And then we're going to let it run for a year and then we're going to do that again. You can start to relive the same experience and it's familiar but different. And so that's how action RPGs have not had to keep up with the content wave that WoW and 14 do to try to keep people subbed. And when that content wave stops, people unsub. That's how action RPGs are able to release effectively one amount of content that people replay over and over and over and over. And that's something that like I think WoW Classic's going to have to try to find a way to do. And so obviously Square Enix would be watching that very closely because they're not gonna like, oh, how can we experience all the bad and good that anybody who's ever done anything like this? It's like, no. I like some of the things. I specifically don't like some of the other things.
Right.
And so how do you learn from their mistakes, or even some of the things that worked for them might be something you're like, yeah, I get that works for them. I'm still not interested because inspiration doesn't mean copycat.
Chill, you're right. Yeah, if we were talking 75, technically, I guess you could go through Treasures of Outer God. So yeah, you're right.
It's an interesting kind of thing because obviously right now we kind of pivoted slightly to talk about the past, but I want to kind of shift a little bit and talk about the future. Like obviously with Fusion saying like Yoshi P kind of was like, oh, Return of Vanity. Well, we're gonna say hashtag joking, like let's not take that as fact at the moment. But where do you see us going? In this game, we've got like New World, in the sense of the New World. Thank you, Amazon, for that naming confusion. Now, whenever I talk about
it's really hard to Google.
Yeah, it's like, all right. We also have Meracidia. We have shards and things like that. Where do you think? What would you expect to see here after? Honestly, how the other question is how much are you going to grind on the 19th? Like, are you going to?
Well, I have the week off. Me and the wife already have the week off. Of course, she doesn't have to review the game like I do. So we'll probably be playing in separate rooms, and because we did Shadowbringers, and I was on the TV right next to her, and I was getting like far ahead. And she's like, "What's going on? Like, I'm getting spoiled over here." I'm like, "Sorry." Oh, your Sola died. Oh no, she's okay. Never mind. She's like still an Amarang. It's like, oh. So yeah, it's hard, right? I appreciate that they're trying something new with the story pacing with 6.0, right? Where everything is going to be wrapped up with 6.0, right? It's not one of those things where Shadowbringers comes out and then it's kind of a launch pad going forward. This is it. Then we're going to start something completely new. I think I don't know if I would call it like a concern or a worry, but with that, right? You think of new storylines in 14, right? Over the last 10 years, every time we have the start of a new story, we have a bunch of new areas. And yes, we are getting some new areas with Endwalker, but those are to work towards the conclusion of 6.0. So in 6.1 until 7.0, we're probably just going to be bouncing around the current areas. Maybe they'll have a couple of small kind of instance things like Turncliffe or Gongos or something. They've been doing more of that. But it'll be a little weird to have this new arc, but then mentally, right, we're like, but there's no new areas for it. I think that'll be the biggest thing for me.
What if there were?
I would be surprised.
Guild Wars and WoW add things with each expansion, but like WoW also adds the mid expansion.
I would be
what
very
if we
surprised.
had either a zone or another half to a zone, right? An area that we cannot go now, because he said that he believes that part of the theme of the zones is something that we missed in the media tour, and I don't think that's just quest givers missing. It wouldn't shock me if those zones, I mean, at the very least, the way Shadowbringers zones change, as you quest through Shadowbringers, the zones feel different, obviously, because the story drastically impacts those zones, but they feel different as opposed to previous expansions where you quest through the zone and the zone itself seems relatively unimpacted by our choices.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of that is the day-night cycle.
Yes.
You know, and I think too with Endwalker, I think you know, they'd made this comment in the media tour for Thavner. They're like, we made sure that it would be clear skies in Thavner so that you know, if you want to take nice pictures and all that stuff. I'm like, is that why? Because in the trailer the sky's on fire.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if that's not going to be in effect, like an actual skybox thing when we go to
put out the fire for your photos.
We didn't start the fire.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they do something like that. We know that they can now after Shadowbringers. And so yeah, it'll be interesting. I would be very surprised if they add a new area that's not like a Eureka or Rabosha type content, just like an actual new field area. I would be very, very surprised if they do that. But again, that's because of what they've done previously.
Right.
And you know, with every expansion, they always try to do something a little different. So it's possible. It's definitely possible that we could see something like that this time around.
Bigger question to you, because you and I were there with Yoshi P's 2.0 plan. You know, talking to us as 1.0 players going into the future, and we really haven't had a roadmap for the game. Do you feel like what he was kind of hinting at after Endwalker is that layer of like, here's what our plan is for the next 10 years, or are we going to have it more or less just kind of what we come to expect? Like, here's what you can expect in 6.1, here's what you can expect in 6.2. What's your read?
I don't think we're gonna look that far ahead. I think we'll definitely get a taste of what they're thinking about. The biggest example that I can think of is in the interview, because we had this small presentation before we got our hands on, and they talked about how, you know, they'll continue to do trusts in dungeons and but they didn't say dungeons, they said like 6.1 onward. And so I asked him about that. I'm like, what's going on with trusts? And the impression that I got from this interview is that they're looking to expand trust a lot, and not just in dungeon content. I think they're gonna just open the floodgates on trust and making it so that people can do this game without having to partner up with other people. I don't know exactly what the scale of that is going to be at 6.0. I don't know who these trusts are going to be. Like, obviously they've talked about like, oh, we'll say goodbye. Maybe they die, maybe they don't. We'll say goodbye to some of the scions. So obviously it's like, okay, but they're my trusts. So what's going to happen? We've talked about this on Aether Radio a little bit. Maybe they'll bring back the Company of Heroes. Maybe there will be some kind of big move. Maybe they'll bring back free roaming primals. Remember when that was a thing? 10 million years ago? Not
only a thing, but it was highlighted in the 2.0 like content trailer.
He talked about it so much. Like, yeah, we're gonna have these free roaming primals. And you can get them
free
for
companies
your
FT,
and it's gonna be great.
And we can summon primals now within Heaven on High. You know, so like ideas can change.
Yeah, so it'll be curious to see. I mean, I came out of this interview, and I've talked about this again on our podcast, but going into this interview, it was just like, okay, like it's another expansion. We know what's coming. But after talking to Yoshida and the way that, you know, in this presentation, he talked about how they're sparing no expense going forward. They're talking about the next 10 years. I came away from this interview. I'm like, he's planning something. Like something's going to happen, and it's going to just blow our minds. And I've never been that excited for 14. Like I know, like he's scheming, and I love that.
I get the same read. I like that's what you and I were talking prior. That's a fun word that I made up. prior to the embargo going up, and we're just like kind of just discording as we're like, hey, let's get the podcast, and it's like, are we feeling this thing? Like it's ethereal. It's not like he's like, hey guys, I'm gonna blow your minds, but it's like I feel like I'm getting that body language. I'm a cocky Yoshi P is essentially the best way I can describe
he's got a swagger that he has not
Yeah.
chosen to present. There was some shade thrown, even like it was a swagger bordering on like humble arrogance. Like there was I'm not bragging to you, but I know I can do this. Like there was if another division of Square Enix can make the same money that I can, I'd like to see them try. He said that. Like he's like, I would like to see that. And we're talking about reevaluating the patch schedule. We're looking at the patch schedule and just evaluating, because the move at the end of this saga, this is the time when maybe we don't have to follow the patterns of the past. Maybe they follow the patterns of the past, but this is the chance to reevaluate. But what I can tell you is that we wouldn't be the type of game that would go like 200 days without a patch. Like there are just these sayings where you're like, oh snap, and like, I think what's important is that like people don't ever feel like, do the devs even play the game? Like these are all things he said throughout. Now it's spread over 36 or more different interviews.
Yeah.
But so like, it's not like he's just coming out punching, but there are these just like subtle jabs at like, I know we're rocking it right now. Like I'm aware we are destroying it. And just know that we showed you the least spoilery content from Endwalker. Like I have given you guys a taste.
Yeah.
So he's got something big.